Most men do not fail because they are weak. They fail because they cannot hold tension. This distinction matters because weakness can be trained out of a man, but intolerance to tension quietly governs his entire life. Most men never notice it directly. They just notice the symptoms. They rush decisions that should be held. They reach for relief when pressure appears. They escalate conversations that required silence. They abandon standards the moment discomfort arrives. From the outside, it looks like poor judgment. From the inside, it is something more precise. An inability to stay present when opposing forces exist at the same time. The tension between what they want and what is required, who they were and who they are becoming, truth and comfort, responsibility and relief. These tensions are not problems to be solved. They are conditions of adulthood, but most men were never trained to stay inside them. So the moment tension appears, the system looks for an exit. Some men explode it outward. They raise their voice. They dominate the room. They assert prematurely. Other men collapse inward. They appease. They over-explain. They soften. They disappear. Some men numb it entirely. Substances, distraction, stimulation, noise. Different behaviors but same impulse. Escape the tension. This is why pressure exposes men so quickly. Not because pressure is extreme, but because it removes the possibility of avoidance. Pressure forces two truths to exist simultaneously. This matters, this is uncomfortable. And a man who cannot hold both at once will always choose relief over integrity. The modern world accelerates this failure. Men are trained, subtly, constantly, to resolve tension immediately, to swipe it away, to epitomize it, explain it, turn it into content, turn it into productivity, turn it into dopamine. Very few spaces train a man to stay, but masculinity has never been defined by force. Force is crude. Force is reactive. Force leaks energy. Masculinity, in its mature form, is defined by capacity. Capacity to stay present without acting, feel pressure without leaking, carry responsibility without dramatizing, hold contradiction without collapsing into identity confusion. This is why men who appear strong often break first. Their strength was never structural. It was circumstantial. It worked when conditions were easy and favorable. It failed when pressure removed choice. This is also why breakdowns often happen after success, not before it, because success increases responsibility, and responsibility increases tension, and tension exposes what never trained. This is the frame of this video. Not how I can escape pressure, not how to dominate it, not how to bypass it through intensity or ideology, but how a man becomes someone who can hold tension without fleeing. Because the man who can do that does not just survive difficulty, he becomes reliable under it. Every serious masculine tradition understood something the modern world has forgotten. Tension is not an obstacle. It is the training ground. Across cultures, epochs, and belief systems, men were not shaped by comfort. They were shaped by contained difficulty. The warrior did not train in chaos. He trained under weight. The monk did not escape discomfort. He sat inside of it. The initiate was not reassured. He was tested under uncertainty. Not to break the man, not to traumatize him, but to stretch his capacity. This distinction is crucial. This is the difference between trauma, which overwhelms the nervous system, training, which loads it gradually and deliberately. Healthy initiation applies enough pressure to require presence, but not so much that the system fractures. That is why intact traditions used things like repetition, duration, constraint, silence, responsibility, not constant novelty, not emotional intensity masquerading as depth. They understood something simple. A man who cannot hold tension cannot lead anything real. Not a relationship, because intimacy is tension. Not a family, because responsibility never resolves cleanly. Not a business, because uncertainty is permanent. Not even himself, because inner conflict never disappears. Leadership does not begin when life becomes calm. Leadership begins when pressure no longer dictates behavior. This is where modern men are unprepared. They are taught how to act when motivated, how to perform when inspired, how to push when rewarded. They are not taught how to remain steady when nothing has been resolved. No one is reassuring them. When the answer is not available, when discomfort must be carried forward. So when tension arrives, they rush resolution. They decide too fast. They speak too early. They choose relief over coherence. And the tragedy is this. They believe they are being decisive when they are actually being driven by the body's intolerance to that tension. This is why masculine training historically emphasized containment. The ability to stay present while not acting. The ability to feel urgency without obeying it. The ability to carry ambiguity without collapsing into ideology. Because a man who cannot tolerate not knowing yet will always outsource authority to impulse, to others, or to circumstance. Tension is where agency is forged, not in the moment of action, but in the moment before action, when nothing compels you except discomfort. This is why men who avoid tension appear busy, but they're really directionless. They are always doing something, always reacting to something, always resolving the next thing. But nothing consolidates, because consolidation requires holding competing forces long enough for something real to emerge from there. This is also why initiation was timed. Boys were not thrown into pressure randomly. They were prepared. The body was trained. The nervous system was strengthened. The ego was humbled. The will was stabilized, so that when tension arrived, the man could carry it without dramatizing it. Modern men are often thrown straight into pressure without necessary preparation. No training in restraint, no training in silence, no training in containment. And then we wonder why they burn out, explode, numb, commit suicide. Tension did not break them. Lack of capacity did. This matters because it reframes the entire path. You are not being punished by the pressure you feel. You are being trained by it. Whether you realize it, whether you acknowledge it or not, the only question is whether the training is a conscious endeavor or unconsciously done. Whether tension shapes you deliberately and honorably, or whether you leak it sideways into damage. Most men do not break under pressure in a massive, explosive way. They leak quietly, habitually, predictably. Tension enters their system, and instead of being carried, it is discharged sideways. This is why so many men believe they are handling things while their lives slowly destabilize. The pressure didn't overwhelm them. They evacuated it. There are 3 primary leakage routes. Almost every man uses one. Many rotate through all 3. Urgency is the most socially rewarded form of tension leakage. It looks productive. It sounds decisive. It feels powerful. But urgency is rarely clarity. Urgency is the nervous system trying to escape sensation. A man under urgency decides way too fast, acts before information settles, speaks to relieve pressure, not to communicate truth, confuses speed with leadership. He tells himself, something has to be done. I can't just sit here. I'll lose momentum if I wait. What he is really saying is, I cannot tolerate this feeling any longer. Urgency resolves discomfort, not problems. This is why urgent men often create more work for themselves, more conflict, more cleanup that they have to do later. They move quickly, but not cleanly. And because urgency feels active, it is rarely questioned. But leadership is not speed. Leadership is direction under pressure. And direction requires stillness long enough for the truth to surface. Another way men leak is through numbing. If urgency is tension leaked through action, numbing is tension leaked through disappearance. This is the most common modern strategy. Phones, porn, food, alcohol, substances, endless scrolling, constant background noise, sex, relationships. None of these are inherently evil, but they become dangerous when used to avoid holding internal weight. Numbing doesn't remove tension. It simply postpones it, and postponed tension accumulates massive compound interest. A man who numbs regularly loses sensitivity to internal signals, becomes reactive when the buffer runs out, requires stronger stimulation over time, mistakes relief for rest. The problem is not that he relaxes. The problem is that his nervous system never learns. I can carry this without escaping this. So when real pressure arrives, relational pressure, financial pressure, existential pressure, he has no trained capacity. Only exits, only leakage. This is how men become dependent on the relief. Not because they are weak, but because they were never trained to stay. And then there's performance. Performance is the most deceptive leakage. It looks intelligent. It sounds mature. It feels responsible and socially acceptable. Performance leaks tension through language and explanation, over-talking, over-explaining, over-justifying, over-framing. The man performs coherence instead of practicing to hold it. He speaks to manage others' perception. He explains to control narrative. He clarifies to avoid being misunderstood, not because explanation is actually needed, but because tension is utterly intolerable. Words become a release valve for that pressure, and each time he leaks through performance, his body learns when it's uncomfortable, we walk our way out. This is why some men sound insightful but remain unstable. They have language for everything except restraint. Performance creates the illusion of strength, while at the same time eroding the capacity to actually hold the pressure. None of these strategies actually solve the tension. They just betray it, and the body keeps the score. Every time tension is leaked, instead of tension held, the nervous system learns, I cannot be trusted under this load, under this pressure. This is why confidence becomes brittle, why boundaries collapse like a house of cards at the slightest inconvenience. This is why pressure feels personal instead of formative. The issue is not actually the man's character. It is his conditioning. A man who rises does not eliminate tension. He learns how to stay inside of it. He notices the urgency and waits. He feels the pull to numb and remains present. He senses the urge to explain and stays silent. Not forever, just long enough. Long enough for the body to learn a new rule. Tension does not require escape. That rule changes everything, because once tension can be carried, clarity becomes available. And clarity is the only foundation for clean, pure, honorable action. This is where most conversations about masculinity collapse into fantasy, because men are told to be strong without ever being taught what strength actually is. And strength is not willpower. Strength is not mindset. Strength is not productivity hacks. Strength is not white-knuckling it and gritting your teeth through chaos. Strength is nervous system capacity. A man does not break because life is too hard. He breaks because his system cannot hold the internal load that life is applying upon him. This is why two men can face the same pressure and respond in completely different ways. One panics, whereas one stabilizes. The difference is not intelligence. It is not morality. It is not even courage. It is regulation. A regulated man can pause without freezing, act without panic, speak without defensiveness, hold silence without anxiety. This is not personality. This is physiology. When pressure arrives, the nervous system answers first, long before philosophy arrives, long before values or identity get a say. An unregulated system interprets tension as danger, so it mobilizes you, prepares you for fight, for flight, for fawning, for freezing. A regulated system interprets tension as load, on the other hand, not threat. So it stays online. And this is the difference between reacting and responding, between compulsion and between choice. Most men will hear discipline and think punishment. They imagine restriction, harshness, self-denial, straitjackets. That misunderstanding keeps them weak. Discipline is not about control. It is about capacity training. You do not lift weights to suffer. You lift weights to increase what you can carry. Discipline does the same for the nervous system. Routine, repetition, boredom, predictability. These things don't look heroic, but they expand the system's ability to stay present under load. A man who cannot tolerate boredom cannot tolerate responsibility. A man who cannot tolerate discomfort cannot tolerate truth. A man who cannot tolerate stillness cannot tolerate leadership. This is why discipline precedes freedom, not in a moral sense, in a biological sense. Pressure reveals structure when life presses on a man. It is not testing his ideas. It is testing his structure, his system. Pressure reveals weak identity, borrowed confidence, unintegrated insight, performance as strength. Anything that was assembled through intensity alone fractures under sustained load, sustained pressure. This is why so many men feel fine until they are asked to commit, to decide, to lead, to hold someone else's weight, because the system was never trained for containment, only for stimulation. The regulated man does not harden. This is critical. Regulation does not mean becoming cold. Far from it. It does not mean emotional shutdown. It does not mean indifference. It does not mean suppression. A regulated man feels everything. He simply does not let sensation dictate behavior. He notices the tightening in his chest. He notices the heat rising up inside of him, the urge to escape, the impulse to speak, and he does not obey it immediately. That pause, even 2 seconds, is the birthplace of authority. Because authority is not force. Authority is the capacity to remain intact while pressure exists. People do not trust men just because of their words. They trust men because of felt stability. Your body broadcasts whether you can hold weight or not. Your aura does, and others sense it before you even speak. A man who is regulated does not rush, does not over-explain, does not collapse to be liked, does not harden to feel safe. He holds, and holding changes rooms. Conversations slow around him. Drama loses its fire. Manipulation finds no grip. This is why presence precedes influence, and why influence without regulation always collapses into control. You do not rise when life gets easier. You rise when you become stronger inside of the difficulty. No insight replaces this. No philosophy bypasses this. No identity protects you from it. Masculinity is not defined by dominance. It is defined by load bearing capacity. And capacity is built one way only: by staying present where you previously fled. Men misunderstand pressure because they personalize it. They think resistance means I'm doing nothing wrong. I'm off path. I should go back. I should soften. I should explain. That interpretation is the fastest way to fail at this phase. Because pressure is not commentary. Pressure is diagnostic. Life does not apply tension to punish men. It applies tension to reveal their structure. Pressure is how reality reads you. Reality does not care about your intentions, your self-image, your language, your insight. It cares about one thing: what remains when pressure is applied. When pressure arrives, weak identities fracture, borrowed confidence evaporates, performative masculinity collapses, unintegrated insight turns into anxiety. This happens because life is precise, and pressure shows what is load-bearing and what was decorative. Here is the pattern men miss. The moment a man begins to stabilize, life presses harder, not softer. Old dynamics resurface. old temptations sharpen, old relationships reappear, old shortcuts present themselves again. This confuses men. They think, why now? I'm finally doing better. I thought alignment made things easier. Alignment does not remove pressure. It changes the nature of the test. Earlier, pressure was chaotic. This pressure is surgical. Reality is asking, does this alignment survive inconvenience? Does it survive misunderstanding? Does it survive loss? Does it survive boredom? This is not punishment. This is the calibration. Anything that claims integrity or strength will be tested. This is not spiritual. This is mechanical. If you say, I'm sober now, temptation appears. I have boundaries now, requests increase. I'm disciplined now, boredom intensifies. I'm stable now, responsibility expands. Pressure is not opposition. Pressure is verification. The test is simple. Will you abandon yourself when it costs you something? Most men answer yes because they mistake discomfort for danger. Most men collapse under pressure because they try to resolve tension instead of carrying it. They rush to be understood, to restore harmony, to reduce discomfort, to regain approval. But pressure is not asking to be solved. It is asking to be held. A grounded man does not harden under pressure. He does not perform. He does not negotiate his standards. He stays intact, and staying intact under pressure changes how reality interacts with him. This is the law men never hear. Pressure exists only where movement is possible. If life presses and you move, pressure continues. If life presses and you flinch, pressure intensifies. If life presses and you remain, pressure dissolves. Not immediately, gradually. Because once reality learns, this man does not move under load, it stops pushing. This isn't because it approves, because there is nothing left to test. There are no more leakages. Pressure isolates men because it removes old currencies. Charm stops working. Explanations stop working. Performance stops working. What remains is structure, and structure is quiet. This is why many men retreat here. They mistake solitude for failure. They mistake silence for stagnation. They do not realize they are standing inside the forge. Men who break here ask, how do I make this stop? Men who rise here ask, how do I hold this without abandoning myself? That question alone separates boys from men, because once a man learns that tension does not need escape, he stops being controlled by pressure. Most men misunderstand authority. They think authority comes from volume, certainty, status, knowledge, being the loudest or most convincing in the room. That belief alone ensures they will never have it, because real authority does not come from assertion. It comes from containment. Authority is not claimed. It is felt. Authority is not something a man announces. It is something others register in his presence. You feel it before he speaks. You sense it in how he waits, in how he does not rush, in how he does not need to fill space. This is why men who talk the most about leadership rarely have any. Authority does not argue for itself. It does not persuade. It does not posture. It holds tension without leakage. Tension is where authority is built, because Tension removes all substitutes. Under pressure, intelligence cannot compensate. Charisma grinds to a halt. Language loses its leverage. Status does not stabilize the body. Only one thing matters. Can this man stay coherent while the pressure is unresolved? Most men cannot. They rush to reduce tension because tension exposes them. It exposes their nervous system instability, their dependence on validation, their fear of being misunderstood, their fear of being disliked, their fear of not being in control. So they speak, they move, they explain, they fix, and in doing so, they surrender authority. Leadership begins the moment a man stops needing pressure to end. A man who can sit inside tension without collapsing, hardening, or performing signals something primal and ancient. I can carry weight. This is why people instinctively defer to such men, not out of submission, out of relief, because an uncontained man is a massive risk. He spreads his anxiety. He infects the room with urgency. He forces others to regulate around him. A contained man does the total opposite. He lowers noise. He slows dynamics. He stabilizes space, not by trying, but by not leaking. This is where many men are confused. They think, if I could just better explain this, this would resolve. But explanation under pressure is usually a discharge mechanism, not actual communication. It is the nervous system trying to escape tension through use of language. Authority is built when a man can feel the urge to speak, feel the urge to justify, feel the urge to correct perception, and still remain silent. Not because silence is virtuous, but because action is not yet required. This restraint trains authority into the body, deep down into the nervous system. People respond to your nervous system before they respond to your words. They can feel whether you are braced, whether you are anxious, whether you are steady, whether you are aligned, whether you need something from them. A man who cannot hold tension broadcasts this need. A man who can broadcasts capacity. That difference determines whether people will actually trust you, whether they will actually listen to you, or whether they will test you, whether they will respect your boundaries. And this has nothing to do with dominance. It has everything to do with regulation. Boys seek control because they cannot tolerate the uncertainty. Men contain because they can. This is why shouting is insecure, over-assertion is brittle, over-explaining is defensive. True authority does not hurry. It waits. It allows pressure to exist without needing to neutralize it. That capacity makes a man trustworthy. Authority costs men their coping mechanisms. You cannot be authoritative and leak tension onto others. Use drama to feel alive. Use urgency to feel important. Use performance to feel safe. Authority demands internal silence under pressure. This is why most men never actually reach it. Not because it is complicated, but because it is uncomfortable. A man does not become authoritative in meetings, arguments, or crises. He becomes authoritative in the moments when he does not check his phone, the moments when he does not interrupt silence, the moments when he does not explain himself, the moments when he lets discomfort pass. Those moments are invisible, but they accumulate, and eventually people feel the difference in ways we cannot even begin to explain. Every man eventually discovers that the real test is not external. It is not the argument, not the confrontation, not the demand, not the pressure applied by others. The real test is quieter. It happens inside. Every day presents the same internal moment, a subtle tightening in the chest, a low-grade discomfort, a pull toward relief. And inside that moment, the same question appears. Can you hold this without abandoning yourself? This question does not announce itself. It does not come with stakes or spectacle. It arrives disguised as fatigue, boredom, irritation, loneliness. The sense that this doesn't really matter. When tension rises internally, a voice appears. It sounds reasonable. It sounds compassionate. It sounds earned. It says, just this once. You've been good. You deserve relief. This isn't that serious. No one will know. You can rest tomorrow. This voice is not wisdom. It is the old self negotiating its survival. It is the nervous system trying to escape, load, by returning to what once reduced that pressure. And this is where men misunderstand growth. They think the test is moral. It is not. It is physiological. External pressure has witnesses, consequences, structure. Internal pressure has none of that. No one is watching. No one is enforcing. No one is checking, which means the only thing holding the line is your relationship with yourself. This is why men who appear strong publicly often collapse privately. They can perform integrity. They cannot sustain it alone because the inner test does not reward you. It does not praise you. It does not acknowledge you. It only trains you. Men do not abandon themselves when life gets hard. They abandon themselves when life gets unnoticed, when the cost of collapse feels small, when the consequence feels distant, when the relief feels immediate. This is where the line actually moves, not in conflict, in comfort. When a man holds tension internally without discharging it through his action, his speech, numbing, performance, something critical happens. The nervous system updates. It learns this sensation is not dangerous. I do not need to escape to survive. I can remain intact while this passes through my system. This is conditioning, and it only happens through repetition, through practice. Masculinity is not built in declarations. It is not built in emotional peaks. It is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in the nights you keep your word alone, the moments you resist comfort quietly, the urges you don't obey, the explanations you don't give. These moments look insignificant. Rest assured, they are not. They are the forge itself. Many men confuse discipline with self-punishment. Discipline is not harshness. It is containment. It is choosing to stay present rather than escaping sensation. Punishment creates rebellion. Containment creates strength. And the man who can contain himself privately becomes reliable publicly. This is where self-trust is born. Not confidence, not bravado, not self-esteem. Self-trust, the quiet knowledge. When things get uncomfortable, I do not disappear. I stay here. That currency cannot be borrowed. It cannot be faked. It cannot be spoken into existence. It cannot be bought. It must be earned under tension without witnesses. One moment does not change a man, but repetition does. Each time you hold, the body learns. The system stabilizes. The urge weakens. The line thickens. Eventually, what once felt unbearable feels neutral, and neutrality under pressure is power. This is why the inner test decides everything. A man who collapses privately will eventually collapse publicly. A man who holds privately becomes unshakable publicly, not because he is superior, but because he is trained. The next level of masculinity is not aggression, it is containment. This is the part most men never hear because it doesn't sell well and it doesn't flatter the ego, but it is the truth. Strength is capacity, not force. Force is what you use when you cannot hold something internally. Volume, speed, intensity, dominance, control, those are all substitutes for capacity. Capacity is quieter. It is the ability to remain intact while pressure is present. To not rush, to not leak, to not numb, to not perform, to simply hold. Life does not reward men who escape tension. It tolerates them, it uses them, it burns them out. But it makes room for men who can actually carry weight, because weight needs somewhere to land. A man who can hold tension can hold responsibility without becoming resentful, truth without becoming cruel, authority without dominating, and others without losing himself in the process. This is why such men are incredibly rare and why they are always needed, no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you go. Real authority does not announce itself. It does not posture. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It is felt. People sense whether you rush, whether you flinch, whether you leak under pressure, whether you abandon yourself. Your body broadcasts this long before your words arrive, and people respond accordingly, not consciously, nervously. This phase will not make you popular. There is no applause for restraint, no recognition for silence, no reward for holding when no one sees. In fact, it often feels like nothing is happening. This is the point. What is happening is structure, invisible, slow, irreversible. Most men leave at this stage. They decide it is not working. They decide it is too heavy to bear. They decide they'd rather feel good than become solid. So they return to urgency, distraction, explanation, relief, and life accepts them back in with open arms. But it will not entrust them with weight. The men who stay do not look extraordinary. They are not loud. They are not performative. They are not constantly expressing themselves, but they are dependable. They can be leaned upon. They can be disagreed with. They can be trusted under pressure. They do not need to dominate a room because they stabilize it. They do not need to convince anyone because they are already convinced. What holding tension actually gives you is not happiness, not certainty, not safety. What it gives you is reliability. The knowledge that you will not abandon yourself. You will not negotiate your integrity. You will not collapse to escape discomfort, and you will never forgo your sacred spine. That reliability becomes your center, and everything else builds from there. If you can hold tension, you can hold responsibility, you can hold truth, you can hold leadership, you can hold yourself. This is how men become unshakable, not by escaping pressure, but by letting it shape them without breaking their alignment. This is not a performance. It is a practice. And men who can do this do not arrive here by accident. They stay, they train, they hold, and sooner or later they become something that there is no language to describe.